Hello and welcome to Roll for Topic, a roundtable discussion about topics related to running role-playing games. I'm Chris Salzman.
And I'm Andy Rao.
I think, Andy, that was maybe my best intro I've ever done. And it's been a minute since we've done this.
Yeah, listeners, you don't see this, but that was just one take, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
This never happens.
Yeah, we went straight from talking to our kids to introducing a podcast. But yeah, so we've been, not on hiatus. We had a couple of special episodes, which if you haven't heard, you should go back and listen to. I'm sure some of you pulled up your podcast player and you're going to be excited to see that, oh goodness, this one is not 2 hours long. It'll just be Andy and I today, and we're going to kind of go back to a little bit of a normal schedule, I think.
And just to review, the last couple episodes were our build a dungeon and then play a dungeon episodes, which I guess we've done it twice, so it's an annual tradition now. So yeah, if you didn't get a chance to check those out, and that sounds at all palatable to you, go ahead and check that out.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about like what we learned, with those either on this episode or in future ones. I'm sure it'll come up a bunch, but I know that it was personally very fun for me, and it was great to have a bunch of folks on.
Yep.
Previous guests and some new players and things like that. So. But before we dive into kind of the rest of this episode, I wanted to talk through a little D6 table that we put together actually off air. We asked people to send in their ideas beforehand, and there was a lot of really good ones. So I wanted to go through those, and let's come up with a little table. We'll kind of just read the table out, I guess I should say. Yeah, so I asked the question about what is, something interesting, like a piece of treasure that you could find buried in the snow. So we're up in the Midwest, so it's snowing, of course, right now. So people send in their ideas. So I don't know, Andy, should I just kind of read down the list, or do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead and just read down the list.
Yeah. So Tim said, a vial of a frozen potion, of which you're not sure if it will still be good when it thaws. I like that one a lot because I think you could do as a GM, you could have the potion start to change as it's thawing as well. I think to then like urge the party to either take it immediately or get rid of it.
Yeah, I like that idea so much that I immediately like duplicated that idea in the in your call for submissions, and I glanced slightly up the page. I was like, okay, someone else just said that. I like the idea of like, when if you put like a can of pop or something in the freezer and it like breaks the can open. I like the idea that you have this like ice pop potion that's like broken its container. So as soon as it starts to melt, you're going to lose it. So do you try and chug it down on the spot or what?
Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah. So maybe the tweak to that would just be, let's change it to a broken vial.
There you go.
Yeah. So the potion side's frozen. Okay. So then Aaron said a circular shield emblazoned with the symbol of an ancient civilization. Which, yeah.
Always fantastic.
And then his daughter said 100 strawberries, and this is my personal favorite, or one giant strawberry.
It's got to be the giant strawberry. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, Tim had another idea, a single coin from a long forgotten civilization that seems strangely warm to the touch, which is great.
Yep.
I think I would describe that as, well, let me ask you, Andy, how would you describe that coin if they ran across it?
I don't know, strangely warm, I think that it would have to be sitting in a little depression of like kind of melted ice.
Yes.
And I mean, most of the players I'm familiar with would freak out and spend like 20 minutes trying to figure out how are they going to touch it? How are they going to move it? Yeah. Like how,
Yeah. But really it's a gold piece that's slightly warm.
Yes.
Yeah. Aaron's wife said a tiny extinct creature. Did it freeze to death or was it just hibernating? Yeah, again, the party would name that thing immediately, and it would be very important to make sure that it's okay forever.
I feel like maybe the intent of that was like a tiny cute creature, but I immediately thought of like the movie The Thing, which is that, but like the not cute version of that.
Yeah. Jess said footprints that lead away into the snow and then mysteriously just stop without turning back,
which great.
That's good. I mean, to me, the question is like, how far would you make them go, out before they disappear?
Yes.
And then Kyle said a bone mask that gives the wearer 60 feet of heat vision and keen senses of smell and hearing, which sounds like the most useful possible thing to find in like the snow.
Yes. See, I love that idea, but I think trying to zero in on the least useful possible power it could have for someone stuck in like a blizzard, I think there's a lot of richness in that. in that
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah, it's super fun. All right. Well, yeah, thank you to everybody who played along. This is really good. I think it was more than 6, but I liked all of them. So we
Yeah.
went ahead and read all of them. But yeah, please let us know if you end up using any of those. I think I'm for sure probably going to use the giant strawberry somewhere because I like the idea of running across a fresh piece of fruit in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
It's just, yeah.
Yes, where it
Really
should
good.
absolutely not be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey, Chris, before we move on to the next, I guess, segment, do we call it segments or is that too professional?
That's very professional.
Okay.
Yes.
I take
let's
it.
go with it. Okay.
Yeah, I had a question I wanted to ask you, but if you had something else you wanted to do first.
No, go for it.
Okay. Well, I was just going to ask because the new year kind of came and went, and I don't know if you're like a resolutions person or not, but I was wondering if you would be willing to share like maybe one reflection on your gaming experience last year and maybe one. We don't have to say it's a resolution because that sounds awfully like it carries a weight of expectation. But maybe
Yeah.
one hope or plan for 2021 as far as gaming goes.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I have no expectations for 2021, so I'm trying to not have any resolutions either about what's going to happen.
Was it a good year for you last year? I mean, as far as gaming, and we all know it was not a good year in any objective sense, but
yeah, objectively it wasn't, although there are some highlights. So I think there's this strange thing. I think everybody will kind of understand this if you've spent any amount of time reflecting on your life. But lots of bad stuff can happen, but then there's good stuff sort of sprinkled throughout. Like, we have a second kid. Like we had a baby last year, I ended up getting really close to some certain people that I was surprised to get close to because of just the pandemic and all that. But as far as gaming is concerned, I think the thing that I really realized about myself is that I enjoy doing like one shots and short campaigns way more than I like doing long campaigns. So I think most of my gaming this past year was these sort of short little things. Like, so yeah, one session for the most part. Yeah. And I really like that. And I think there's something that's, with playing online and then also with, kind of pandemic protocols. So if you're in person, your distance and stuff, one shots like that work better. So I am really interested to do more of that in 2021, just to sort of try a bunch of different things. I think it is the thing that I'm looking forward to. But yeah, what about you? Do you have any reflections?
The highlight, I had a couple things that were good moments, last year as far as gaming goes. And one of it is simply getting to know a lot of the people that have like appeared on this podcast with us as guests. Being just surprised at how nice it is to have a community of friendly people like that in your hobby. So that's been a really nice thing. And even when people just show up on the podcast and we only have 45 minutes with them and then we don't really interact with them too much after that, I don't know. I count myself really lucky to have this podcast and opportunity to talk to cool people.
Totally agreed.
So, and that was just really reinforced this last year. And like, I really appreciated, I mean, we missed you while you were gone, but I really appreciated the chance to have John Corey on as a co-host. And anyway, but the other thing is, I really ended up enjoying, after what I thought was a kind of shaky start, I really ended up enjoying that Alien campaign. And
cool. Yeah.
After we finished playing it, I was like, oh, that was fun, but I don't need to play Alien again, for a very long time. But just in the last couple of weeks, I've been, feeling kind of that call to like, maybe, I wonder what else I could do with this, with this. And it was just a good confidence booster as far as running something online that went well. I've run stuff online and it's gone fine, but that was the first one where after we wrapped up that campaign, I felt good. I felt really pleased with how it had turned out, and that was just a little confidence booster I needed. And so that's led into one of my 2021, not resolutions, but kind of plans, which is to run just to run something regularly. And so we've already had the first session of a Band of Blades campaign.
Oh, I didn't realize you had the first session already.
Yeah, well, it was the character creation campaign,
okay,
session 0, I guess you might call it. And it was such an inspiring session. And just seeing how enthusiastic the players were about it. And, we're not doing anything ambitious. We're just going to play once a month and see how it goes. But so I hope to do more gaming than just that. But if we get a good ways into a Band of Blades campaign, I feel very happy.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many, I mean, can I ask a couple questions about the Band of
Yeah, for
Blades?
sure. Yep.
So, I mean, Band of Blades, there is like a set amount of sessions, right, that you play through. There's an
Yes.
end game.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a ticking
Yeah.
clock. The actual number of sessions can be a little variable, but there
Hmm.
is a clock that is counting down,
Okay.
and you can lose the game by not getting to your destination by the time
Oh,
the timer runs out. Basically, there's
okay.
things you can do in the game to slow the timer down a little bit, and there's things that can
Hmm.
happen that speed it up. But overall, I mean, the intent of it is that 10 to 15 sessions or something is
Okay.
probably about as long as I would see a game going, and then
Yeah.
then you either lose or win. So
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, so then you did session 0, I guess. Were you surprised by the sorts of characters that people made?
I was, yeah, well, that game is fairly prescribed in like sort of the sorts of characters you build. So
Okay.
it's not like everyone is brainstorming like crazy, like, I'm a tiefling cleric, but what I was surprised by, I shouldn't have been surprised by this, but I was just surprised by how enthusiastic people were,
Hmm.
and how much people are excited to kind of engage with the premise. Yeah, I don't know. It left me with a good feeling. We have 4 players. The game, since it's a little bit more structured than like D&D, you're really not supposed to go more than 5 players. So
Okay.
we're gonna. I think 4 is almost a perfect number of players.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've talked a lot on this podcast, I think, about the expectations and, sort of like how much do you make the players understand the rules and things like that. And it sounds like the group that you have is coming at the game in the way that you really want players to come at the game. Would you say that's true?
Definitely,
Okay.
and this is not to cast aspersions in any way on other groups I've played with, but it was
Mhm.
nice. I've been prompted a couple of times since that character creation session by players saying, "Hey, when are we meeting?" and "Hey,
Oh,
here's my character idea. What do you think?" And I don't know. It's just fun to be not feel like I have the burden of kind of maintaining the enthusiasm and momentum of the
yeah.
game. So, and I hope that that means that the players will, keep me on track and accountable as well.
That's cool. Yeah, it sounds like more of a like an equal partnership rather than you dragging an entire group along.
Yeah.
Like which can sometimes happen. But
Yeah. And,
yeah,
sometimes that's fine too. It's not,
yeah.
yeah, as we've discussed, the each game it has a unique dynamic between the GM and the players and stuff.
Hmm.
So it's all good, but this will be
Hmm.
a fun one for me, I think.
That's super cool. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that I can drop in and make a guest appearance at least once
Yeah, please
and
do. I
just
think
totally derail everything.
well, I think the game is pretty much like a meat grinder as far as
Okay.
PC life expectancy. So it'd be trivial for you to pop in and play an almost certainly doomed like rookie character for one session.
Yeah. That's great.
Anyway, so anyway, didn't mean to derail us quite so much with Band of
No,
Blades
that's good.
talk, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm also terrified by the actual Band of Blades rules,
Hmm.
which are terrifying. But
Yeah, they're dense.
but but we'll see how it goes, and I'll certainly you will not be able to avoid hearing occasional updates on this podcast.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, the nice thing about like even like playing Blades in the Dark, there's a ton of rules, and it does help to understand all of them. But you can also still have fun, without getting everything quite right. And I know from the people that you have in that group, there's enough other like GM experience that you'll be able to piece things together.
Yes, actually, the
Yeah.
the thing that made me finally be able to feel really excited about this, despite my terror of the Band of Blades rules, is everybody I'm playing with is like a GM with usually a lot of experience. So
Yeah.
I am fully anticipate there will be times where I will be like, "Help me out, guys!
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, help me out," and I will get
Yeah.
help because it's for people that are great GMs. So
Yeah. I know, like running the dungeon, the last episode was just really fun because like when you're playing with GMs, we talked a little bit about it too, like, and Tim had brought this up, but like there's always that moment when you're a GM playing in a game where you're like you have to stop yourself from just taking control.
yes,
or just interjecting, what you would do if it was sort of your campaign that you're running.
yes.
Yeah, but I mean, like to me, that's a really useful part about it. But I mean, if you were overly defensive, that could be a bad, a bad
Yes,
thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. One last question for you. I mean, is there a particular game you plan to run in 2021, or a particular one shot you're already fashioning in your mind, or are you just gonna see what happens?
Yeah, I have one particular idea, and yeah, I think I can share it here. So I'm a woodworker. Is another hobby of mine. So I really want to make a fairly intricate puzzle box that becomes sort of the set piece of the
Ooh.
game.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that you, at the beginning of it, you're handed a puzzle, like a puzzle box. So like there's only a certain way to open it. It's not very clear. And then also to set up like certain keys and things like that they need to collect throughout
Hmm.
in order to open it. So that's my big plan. It'll probably happen in like 2022 would be my
Yeah.
guess. But like I really want to try it because I think there could be something super fun about the tactile nature of that.
Oh, absolutely.
To especially just being able to like at certain points hand them a key and it's like this thing you've been trying, this mechanism you've been trying to open, like you were missing this part, this part of it. So we'll
Well,
see.
as
Yeah.
if that takes shape, I hope you'll report back on the show here.
Oh,
Because
of course.
sounds
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, you probably will not get me to shut up about it if it works, but it's yeah, it's something like, so there's that. And then I mean, I've been talking about it forever. I want to do a cyberpunk something.
Yep.
The recent game that came out, like the video game, has sort of sucked a little bit of wind out of my sails
Yes.
for that, but maybe I should look at it as an opportunity to tell the story that I want to.
That's right,
in
yeah.
a cyberpunk universe. So yeah, that's kind of what I got going on.
Okay.
But then I'm hoping that I get to be, a player in a couple games too. Like I'm playing in a few things that I think are like sort of wrapping up. There's a long running Eternal Lies campaign I've been playing with Matt Wilson,
Yeah.
and I think we have maybe our last session
Okay.
next week, which is super exciting.
I don't want to spoil anything, so maybe we can talk off the air, but I have to learn if there was like any kind of twist at the end that you weren't expecting and
Yeah.
and how it played out. But it's like a big secret. There's like a warning at the beginning of that book that's like, please don't share this
Yes.
spoiler on the internet.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to finishing that campaign up and then going and reading all the stuff that I've been avoiding. So like anytime that I see Eternal Lies pop up on a blog, something like that, I just like quickly close the tab.
Yes.
Like I can't know anything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the GM you've been using for that game, in the past he's gone all out, if I recall correctly, on things like immersive props and things like that.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that correct? Is that
Yeah.
how has that been affected by the pandemic and remote gaming?
Oh, greatly. Yeah, I feel bad for Matt. He had plans for a really cool prop based puzzle for every chapter, but that sort of fell apart from the pandemic.
Yeah.
The one, I mean, he had a super great one. I think in the first chapter was the only one that we met all the way through. Maybe the second chapter of that, right? Because the Eternal Lies is split into separate chapters. Or at least that's how he's running it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he brought in an actual lockbox.
Oh.
Like it was just so cool, right? And so we had to get the key and open the box and stuff. But yeah, that was great. Yeah, there's something about that setting I think that lends itself well to those sort of physical puzzles.
Yeah.
Because I think the setting, 1930s or so, like you don't just have computers to solve problems for you.
Yeah.
But it's still a little bit sophisticated. So there's some mechanical stuff that can happen.
Yeah. Well, there's something about that era. If you think of like, pulpy adventure and kind of pulp archaeology and that sort of thing, there's all of those old puzzles are always so physical. There's no computer password guessing or code hacking or anything like that. If you want to solve the puzzle, it is a physical puzzle you have to push around with your hands or whatever.
Yeah. So and you better hope that you're doing it right because you can't push those things around forever.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah. Well, that's great, and I'm glad that some of that has shown through even in remote gaming. So
yes, for sure. Yeah. All right. Should we? So we've been talking for like 20 minutes. I'd like to roll on the actual table of topics.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've done
It's been
that.
a
but
while.
if we can. So I think I have a D10 handy. So I'm going to go ahead and roll.
Please
do. You announce what we're going to talk about.
Oh, I
for
will.
Probably 10 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. 2.
A 2. Oh, this is a always relevant one. How do you handle game scheduling?
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. Do you handle game scheduling? I guess is.
Yeah. I wish I had someone to delegate it to.
I mean, this is one of those topics every GM will like raise their hand
Hmm.
and cite as one of the big challenges of role playing, right?
Yes.
And it certainly has not gone away with a year of remote gaming. So why don't we start by you telling me how you have scheduled your games in the past?
There, I had a realization fairly recently about this. So I'm glad this got rolled because yeah, this is just always on my mind. When you are trying to schedule something, there's two steps and you cannot combine them or else you're going to run into pain. So the first step is you need to figure out who's going to play, like who is interested in playing. Right, like that is a whole separate thing from
Mm.
scheduling a game. And
Yep.
I've combined those things before and it just ends up being a problem. Or you try to do it in the reverse where you like pick a day and then try to find the people, and that's always a big ordeal as well. So you need to find the people, and then as far as actual scheduling goes, then from there that's where things get a little fuzzy, but I think once you've locked down the group, that really just that helps with the scheduling
Yeah.
part. Yeah, so I typically use Doodle to do the actual scheduling. Just, I mean, I think there's a million other options out there now for like, hey, here are a bunch of times. Tell me when you can make it.
Yeah.
That seems to work best for me, and I like to keep it to just a handful of times as well, rather than like here's the next 7 months. Let me know every day. That works. But yeah, so that seems to work okay, at least for the sorts of people that I'm playing games with now. I don't know. I think if I was in a different life stage and I had different sorts of friends, it would be like just way too formal,
Oh, for sure.
formal of a setup. But yeah, so I don't know. What about you?
Well,
What's
I
your
can tell
approach?
you the way like that over the last couple of years, the way I typically schedule games, and this is literally the worst possible way you could schedule role playing games.
Uh,
And this is what I would do until fairly recently, where I've gotten my act together a little bit with some inspiration from you and others we've had on the show. So
mhm.
the typical way I would do this is I would send out an email. That email, I'm glad you mentioned you gotta like kind of nail down your players as part of this, because my email would go out usually, and maybe 30% of the people who are receiving the email have expressed like interest in playing, but not commitment in playing.
Okay.
And like I mean, so they're genuinely interested, but they are not in a place in their life where they can say, "I'll definitely be able to commit to this." So
Yeah.
that's kind of like one strike against the odds of successful scheduling right there. And then my email will say something like, hey, let's all get together. How does such and such a date work? And then over the course of like the next week, emails will trickle in, and usually several people will say that'll work great. And then, at some point though, someone will say, I can't do that date. So then you kind of go through this like email shuffle, email dance where you're like, well, what about this date? And can you suggest
Uh-huh.
another date? And that never works with anyone else. And eventually we settle on a date, and like half of the people can make it tops. And,
Hmm.
it's enough to and you play and you have a great time, and that's fine. And
Yeah.
then continuing my, strategy, my worst possible strategy. Then after that game, I would send out another email saying, hey, that was fun. When do we want to meet again? How about such and such a date? And then we repeat the process.
Yes.
So that's bad on so many levels. It's a way of maximizing like chaos and uncertainty, and dramatically increasing the odds that you and the players will just tire of this and
Yes.
lose your enthusiasm for playing it all. So
Hmm.
how's that for like worst case scenario?
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good for worst case scenario.
Yeah. So lately, with the with Aliens, and with this Band of Blades game, I've been being smarter and realizing that this discussion is part of the game you're playing. And
Hmm.
so if it's a confusing, irritating process for everybody, you are dampening everybody's enthusiasm for the game before you even get to the table, right? So
Yeah.
for the Alien game, I used Doodle to put out some dates and just get some firm commitments about when people can make it. And with Band of
Hmm.
Blades, before we start the campaign, we are establishing like we're going to meet on the X on the whatever the first Thursday of every month period, and
Hmm.
that's just going to be it.
Yeah.
And that cuts out that whole having to schedule anew after every single game. And so a big smarter
Mhm.
about it now, and it seems to be working. But check in with me in 6 months to see how this is going.
Yeah, in 6 months it will have shifted to like the second Tuesday and then the third Wednesday.
Yeah.
Competing months.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's really tricky. I mean, so again, that Eternal Eyes campaign, so one of the players is really good about, as soon as we're done, we schedule the next session. Like while we're all still on the call or all still in person, we schedule the next
Yep,
one.
that's smart.
And we have a set time that generally works. So it's always sort of like 7 p.m. Just sort of like which day. Like let's start 2 weeks out and see if that day works, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that works really well. But we've also been playing together long enough that all of our schedules have ended up sort of synced such that this can work. I think especially when you're working with like a new group, or if you're doing like a short campaign, I think that's where things get really tricky. And so like for your Alien game, like if if two of us couldn't be there for whatever reason, you'd have to cancel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's like a threshold of players at which you can just say, this is the day we're playing no matter what. And to me, that's another distinction in this too, right? It's like, when do you just like set the game in stone and just like, we're going to play no matter what,
Yeah.
versus like, when do you cancel?
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. Do you have like a line where you're like, I will not play one-on-one with with a group?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so generally speaking, of course it could vary depending on the game, but generally speaking, I will cancel a game if only 2 players can be there. I mean, I think you can of course have a great game with 2 players, but yeah, if only 2 people can make it besides the GM, I don't know. That's it's pretty rare that like a role-playing game, like mechanically speaking, can support a large, drop in party size from adventure to adventure. I mean, that's if you're playing D&D by the book, that really messes with encounter balance and challenge levels and stuff like that, and that adds work to you as the GM to reconfigure stuff on the fly. So that said, if I don't have a hard and fast rule, but if it were just 2 people, that's usually where I'm like, it's probably worth canceling. How about you?
Yeah, I have. So in the past, what I've done. Let me back up. So like when I ran my long running D&D campaign, there was a couple times where it was only 2 people could show up, and so then I just improv basically the session.
Yeah,
those ended up being really fun, right? Like so it ended up being a separate story from the main story, but it ended up being a little like side thing that we could do. So yeah, to me those have been really enjoyable, and that really gave me the confidence to stick with just, if there is a day on the schedule, like unless I can't make it for whatever reason, like keep it.
Yeah.
Because like it does go back to the like what you were saying earlier about like setting expectations, even with that initial planning email. If you are willing to sort of flake on the day that you've said that it's going to happen, I think that gives people permission later on to start flaking on those days, or to like they get the message that, oh, this is more flexible than like us picking a day, which can be good. But I mean, for me and my personality, I really need to know like we're playing or we're not, like, and I've made the decision like I'm playing or I'm not.
Yeah.
Like I can't go back and forth, right? I've done that before where I try to like make it work, try to like quickly reschedule for the next day or the day before, and it just causes so much stress and so much pressure, and you're like, this is an optional fun activity. Why am I causing myself stress over this? Yeah.
Over the last 5 or so years, I have come to understand scheduling as a way of respecting your players. That is, so I typically am less busy. My life is less busy than most of my players. So thinking about my last D&D group, and we did some One Ring, I think I was probably like the most flexible schedule person there. And so when I would like cancel and so other people in that group were picking a day a month out, because that was like the one day a month they didn't have school and family and church and work requirements. And so if we are in a situation where like the day before we're suddenly rescheduling or talking about canceling, that's more than just kind of, oh, a bummer, we won't be able to play that week. That is like putting that person in a tough spot of like, because they have committed and plugged in their schedule this time that's really a precious resource for them. So, for that reason, as it's not just a matter of like personal annoyance at making that decision about whether to cancel or reschedule. It's also a matter of like other people. This cost more for other people to commit to this evening, and so if I just casually say, let's just skip it this week, I don't know. That's something I feel like that's disrespectful to the players.
Yeah, I mean like they're your friends, right? It's like you don't want to. There are certain things where it's fun to cancel plans on, right? Like, right? Like I'll just come out and say it. Like sometimes there's a party that you feel like you're supposed to go to, and you just don't want to.
Yeah.
Right. Like so, canceling on that is probably fine, right? Because there's 30 other people who are going to be at this thing. Like canceling on like I'm going to a graduation party. Right, like you can send your card; it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the end of the world. They're not waiting for you to, to roll the hit at the graduation party. So there's that element of it too, right? Like there are certain social things where like it's kind of okay to cancel, but like there is something about gaming. Not that gaming is so important, but it's the investment from everybody.
Yeah,
and I think like you're just right on with that. Like it can take a lot to schedule for certain people. Like I know I'm in a particular life circumstance where like it's hard. Like I need to plan ahead of time, to be somewhere at a certain time, just because of the age of my kids and stuff. Like even with the pandemic, right? It's like it's actually gotten a little bit harder.
Yeah. How is that the case? By the way, I mean how can that have happened? But anyway, carry on.
I know. I'm like talking with other people. Like it's very different depending on your circumstances. What ended up happening. What ends up happening with you. I would just recommend for the next pandemic that rolls around, don't have a baby. Just also don't change jobs. Like don't do what I did. Yeah.
So hey, I have a different question for you about scheduling. Have you ever been in a situation where you could do this, or thought about assigning another person to be the official like scheduler and logistics manager of your gaming group?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I haven't done it because I'm hesitant to like hand off that emotional labor to someone else. So like for my previous job, I did a lot of scheduling stuff with busy professionals and stuff, and like so knowing just the amount of effort it takes to get something on the schedule, like it seems like such an easy thing to do. So I'm hesitant to to pawn that off onto someone else, but it sure does sound nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I had a group that was meeting regularly, that there was someone that had that sort of like mindset and an administrative skill and desire to do it, I would be happy to hand it off to them. But, yeah, have you looked into that at all?
I've not. I think it's same with you. If I do know some people that probably would be, if they were gamers, probably would be happy to have that be a way they contributed to the group, by managing that stuff. But nobody I'm gaming with right now that I feel comfortable, please do this. And also, it's part of being a GM, as you say, it's a big thing to hand off.
Have you ever thought about, and this is something that's been on my mind a lot lately. So like occasionally a night will free up for me where it's just like, well, I don't have anything to do tonight. Have you ever run a session like super ad hoc in that like it's 8 p.m. you don't have anything to do, so you just call a couple people and say like, let's play something?
Not in a really long time.
Okay, so you have done that in the past?
So I have done that. So the only context in which I've done that in like the last decade has been with my kids. So when you have kids and you can say, hey kids, let's sit down and let's just play D&D. And my kids have kind of phased in and out of that being fun for them over the years, but yeah, I guess I've done it. Like it's a little different with kids than with adults. I don't really know any grown-ups right now I could call and say, hey, do you want to swing by and play D&D? My evening just freed up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you would have to go back to like college years for me to find it to find a time when you could legit just say, hey, do you want to come over right now and play D&D? I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I was just thinking about college when like you'd sometimes just be so bored you just kind of wander around and just like whatever was happening, like I guess I'm playing poker now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I mean, so much of college is that. Yeah. What a time to be a gamer. What an age to be a gamer. Like
Yeah. No, I've never done that. Like I've never done this, but I think like I really want to try it sometime. Like, so in some ways, I feel like, Zoom and online gaming would be more conducive towards this, right? Because it's less like, okay, come on out over to my place. It's just like, hey, you're watching Netflix at home. Like, I'm going to do that anyway, right? Like, let's just get a couple other people together and we'll play. We'll roll up some characters real quick and play something. I really like the idea of that. Like, so this would be the opposite of scheduling, would be, very ad hoc. Yeah, I like the idea behind that quite a bit. I think there's a bit of nervousness for me about that, but I don't know why. It's like like at a certain point, you're capable enough as a GM, I think, that you can just do that. Like, you could just wing a game or play something that you've already run before, like that. So there's no real reason like you couldn't do it, but
yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. So
yeah, I'm sensing that you think this is like insane. You're like, you can't.
it honestly, I mean, no, there are no bad ideas here in this podcast space, but
except for this one.
But I don't know. I mean, that kind of makes me want to like try it sometime, to like message someone and say, hey, but the answer would be no. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
right, all right.
So
well, if anyone who's listening to this, if you try to just message Andy or I at some point and just ask us to play and see what happens.
Yes.
It sounds like both of us are intrigued by the idea of not having any time to stress about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we should wrap up our conversation here before too long.
Yeah.
But before we go, why don't we talk about like real nitty gritty scheduling tools that you use? So we both mentioned using Doodle, which is like an online scheduler where you can like propose a couple of dates and people can vote on which day or dates they can make. Do you use other tools, or have you seen other tools that would be useful or could be useful?
Yeah, that's the one I'm most familiar with, other than if you're for some reason talking to everybody, say at the end of another session, right? Like, everybody pulls up their calendar and just, puts it in right then. Doodle, like, I like Doodle a lot, and I tend to keep it, rather than being granular with it. Like, I'll pick a time of day, and then we'll open up a bunch of like the days that work. So it's like, we're going to play at 7 p.m. We just got to figure out which day we're going to play at 7 p.m. That seems to work relatively well for folks. There's another one that I've used. It's very similar. It's like time to meet, or find a time to meet, something like that. Right?
Okay.
Like, and I'm sure like even Facebook has a thing that can do this for you now too. In a professional context, the other thing that I've used is called Calendly, which is really useful for scheduling meetings. Although I don't know how you might use that for scheduling D&D, but if you're in any sort of business context and you need to schedule meetings, I would recommend that.
Yeah.
That's just like that's way outside D&D and RPGs, but yeah.
That is like peak like 2017 right there. A service called like Calendly or something. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I'm glad you mentioned that actually. So, like when you have settled on a time, how do you, between the time when you choose and the time when you actually get together, how do you kind of remind people? Do you share a Google Calendar event, or do you just email and say, don't forget next week is game night? Like, what do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually just email maybe twice in between then, day before and maybe the week before. I should probably create calendar invites. That's pretty smart. I just got invited to a game and that George is going to run, and he created a calendar invite for it, which was really nice.
Yeah, that sounds like something I should do. I do not do that, but I should.
Yeah.
I am a little surprised that of the like numerous virtual tabletops that are out there, that they don't just have built in like a scheduling widget of some sort that like lets you a doodle that lets you pick a date and stuff like that. Now maybe there are some virtual tabletops that do incorporate that, but that seems like kind of a big part of the gaming logistics experience that
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I know there's we talked with Al McWilliams a long time ago. His company, Guild, has something about this. I've been meaning to check it out. I know that they're making a lot of progress too with that. But yeah, there's some opportunities there for sure, I think, to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
To schedule. But Well, my baby is waking up right now, so I think
Yeah,
we should
I was
wrap
going
up.
to ask, is
Yeah.
that little baby Chris that we're hearing in the background?
Yes, yeah, it is.
Okay.
He's fussing, but that's okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this was a pretty good discussion. I feel like we've said a lot of these things in previous episodes, but this is nice to have
almost
it
certainly,
in
yes.
one that we can point back to. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
2 years in, we're like, there's going to be a lot of recycling of ideas we've had before. Just comes with
yes.
the territory.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you, Andy. This has been really good.
It has.
I've been Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rao.
And remember, if your players are having fun, you're a great GM.